You guys want to see a failed 3D print that I did today?
Hell
yes,
yeah.
It's, a cute little low poly Eevee, but as I was removing it from the bed, oh no. Hate to see that.
Well, super glue. It's all good.
Kind of, but you can even see like how it like fucked up the layer below it.
He looks like a South Park character, the Canadians.
Need that thunderstone, eh?
Crusade podcast.
Okay, fucking Dr. Roxo.
EJ Olson here with Nick Durheim.
Yeah, that's me, the cocaine clown.
And Chris Gillyfur.
No cocaine, but I am feeling unusually energetic today. Hopefully it'll make for good radio.
Chris, we were talking off air just briefly about what it is we're going to do today, but I had seen on Reddit, as I'm sure you guys may have seen at some point, people ranking their favorite game from each Nintendo console and sparking all sorts of discussion. And I thought, oh, maybe we should do that. And then I thought, well, we've already done our top 100. It would be kind of futile. I floated it out there. I said, maybe we just sit down and we talk about our favorite game from each console that has not made it onto the top 100, just so that it'll get us to talk about some games that we probably haven't really talked about with each other too much. And then in the group chat, we sort of, it was like, let's do 5 per console. And then it was 3, and we settled on 3. However, I think even talking about 3 each, Chris is making a face at me. That's going to be a really long podcast.
You make a good point. Are we doing this? Are we picking like one gun to the dome, just like one right off the rip? I love that.
That's what I propose. However, if there is someone, like say on Super Nintendo, if I choose Earthbound, which is on my list of 3, but Chris, you get to Earthbound before me, then I have to go to my next option, just so that I just want to talk about some games that we've played and haven't really talked about too much. And it's just kind of a filler week. Zelda comes out 2 days from the release of this episode. So it's going to be a hefty couple of weeks where we're not going to be doing anything but playing Zelda. So, Nick, what do you think about this?
I think for a lot of these consoles, I have a tough time finding a game that I really want to stump for that isn't already on our top 100 list. So I would need your source of our top 100 because I believe you did actually break things down by console. And I didn't do that. And I didn't do that for the list as we were making it. So it's hard for me to filter by that, to remember even like, oh, did we put Mario World and Yoshi's Island on there? It's like, yeah, we probably did do that, huh? So I just need to go over that because I didn't do my homework because I've been a busy lad.
That's fair.
Can I make a counter proposal?
Please.
It was really more of like a modification that one game each, and if at the end of our little discussion we feel strongly we want to speak another name into the ether just to remember it exists, could we do like a 1-sentence why I love it for a second title? And I literally mean 1 sentence. Like, I don't mean we say we're going to keep it brief and then it ends up being a 3-hour podcast. Like, literally like 1 sentence. How do you feel about that?
It's our podcast. We can make up the rules. I just wanted to talk about some games we haven't talked about. So I don't really care what it looks like as long as everybody's happy. Nick's furiously trying to do the homework right now because he's like, I don't want to do this now.
I'm struggling, okay.
I almost missed one. I almost had one on my list that was on top 100. I had to go back and double check, but it's quicker than you think it is, Nick, just to go like, okay, is this here? Yes, no, da-da-da. I don't think we're going to have that much similarity, to be totally honest with you. We're very different gamers, the 3 of us.
Yeah.
I could just be boring and choose Smash Bros. For every console except the GameCube, I guess.
I don't want to just put party games. Otherwise, I would put Double Dash and Mario Kart Wii and 2 different Smash Bros. Games. But I was like, okay, I don't want to put any party games like that on the list. We've talked about those a lot. I also don't want to put any, obviously, top 100 games, but I don't want to put any games like, I was looking at GameCube, and all the GameCube games, for the most part, that I would like want to talk about are on the top 100 and have been talked about, or I played all of the games on a different console, or even like the Switch. A lot of the games I have like played a little bit on the Switch, but mostly ended up on PlayStation with them. And so it's like, feels a little disingenuous. Also, it doesn't matter because this isn't, what would you even call a list like this? Our not favorite games from every console, like our fourth favorite games?
Console Crusade deep cuts.
They're not going to be that deep of cuts, guaranteed.
Doesn't matter. If we say they are, then they are.
Check out this deep cut. It's a first-party published Nintendo game on one of their consoles.
Do you guys remember when we were at the beach and I told you about the new Sleep Raid song and we had this bit about Butterfly by Crazy Town?
Butterfly, one of the most popular songs of the 90s.
Yes. And we were in the studio 2 weeks ago and we were literally arguing. I was like, I don't like using like the lyric deep cut to describe this bit we're doing. And the bit is great. It's fucking awesome. It's hilarious. It's super pop punk. It's awesome. But like calling it a deep cut in the song is fucking dumb. And nobody would agree with me. They're like, who cares, man? It's a deep cut. I'm like, no, it's not. It's literally the opposite.
It's funny if you do like treat it as if you were being serious, but you know that you're not. Like, it's not actually a deep cut. It's like, yo, check out this deep cut, The Matrix. Like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, like that's funny.
Yeah. Anyway, I got a deep cut on this list.
What order are we going in?
I want to just make sure everyone is. Nick, how are you feeling?
Find me a second game on the Wii U that we haven't talked about.
I've got 3 on my list.
Yeah, I've got one that I definitely want to talk about.
We cut Nintendo Land from the top 100, right?
Yes, we did.
Maybe.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, fuck it. This is just, like I said, it's a complete filler idea just to get us talking about some random games. There aren't a lot of games on here where I was like, oh man, I wish this could have made it onto the top 100. I think there are probably some games that if we were to like hash it out and talk about, there are some games where we'd be like, did Kirby Air Ride really make it in over some of these other games? And, you know, it would spark a revisitation of some of the things that
We gotta wait at least a year before we try to hash that out again.
Yes.
No, we're not going to make any changes. No, but
I know. We're also not gonna remember the next time we talk about it. Like, oh yeah, let's go back to the podcast that we did when we were filling time before Tears of the Kingdom comes out.
I have a note in my phone with potential replacements from all 3 of us that have been discussed. So I am keeping a record.
I need to do that too. Thank you for that.
Conversations to revisit. Metroid Prime Remastered? Question mark? This is actually, okay. This is a question I want to pose. Okay, hold on. Guys.
Oh no.
Guys, I haven't talked about my experience with Metroid on the podcast yet, have I?
Oh, you haven't.
No!
Yeah, let him know the pain.
I want to sell Metroid Prime Remastered because I'm done playing it and I will not play it again. Unless it makes its way into top 100, then I am obligated to keep it for the boys back home.
It's going to be on the top 100.
Okay, I figured. So I'll keep it, but bear with me. Where did we leave off? I had just gotten to was it the phase on the Mega Pirate guy?
I don't think you'd even gotten to the Omega Pirate. I think you were still finishing up getting artifacts. You may have done that like the night of that we recorded or something.
Yeah, I had, I think, 2 artifacts left last we had spoke. And I said, I want to beat this fucking game because I've come this far. And I didn't do so to not fight the sick bosses, right? Well, I booted up the other day and, you know, I never turn the game off because I never save. Like, if I see a save station on my way, I'll save. But if I don't run past one or notice, like, I just won't save. I just go to the home screen and shut my Switch down. And then I just boot it, you know, right back in, not have to deal with start times. So I hop in the other day to go after one of my last 2 artifacts. And I'm like right outside where that big pirate dude is. Like, you go into the one room and there's like the big spider tracks that are like diagonal.
Yeah.
There's like 2 fucking random trash mobs in that room. And I didn't realize how low I had been on health. Like, mind you, I've never died in this game. I have literally not fucking died and had to game over and restart from a checkpoint. So I have like no health. I get up into that room and I'm like not even hardly paying attention. I'm just like, oh, I see the big tracks going up. Okay. I just get fucking one shot by one of these trash mobs down the ground below for where you go in. What? Okay, I'm dead. This fucking game boots me back up to Talon Overworld, where I now have 3 artifacts. I don't have the ice spreader and the flamethrower and the what's the photon? What's the fucking red
the
beam?
wave something, I can't remember.
Wave Buster.
And I don't have the what's the fourth?
You don't have the plasma at all?
I don't have the plasma beam. Like literally that far back. From 75% item completion to 44% item completion. It undid like a third of my playtime. And I'm like, that can't be right. That can't be. There's no way I didn't save for that long. The next night, I logged back in and I like triple checked. I really fucked up here, fellas. I had a fucking absolute meltdown. I was so angry I'd wasted all that fucking time. I'm not getting back to where I was. You know how much? That's hours and hours of playtime. So I'll never beat that game.
Let me affirm your experience here a little bit, EJ, that there is no worse feeling to me that would make me instant quit a game than, especially unintentionally, losing hours of progress. Like, to me, that's I maybe never come back, so I don't blame you. However,
Oh, here we go. I knew it was coming.
Really? 30% progress, no saves. Really? How are you getting energy? Is my question. Like, were you just like running around with like 2 full energy tanks and everything else empty, and you're like, this is fine? Like, you're the guy who gets whose gas tank is perpetually like 1/8 of a tank, and you're like, it's fine, I know my vehicle. You're that guy, right? Because I just like, there's
hit.
no, it's there. It's so easy. They put the save stations all over the place, and you just like open the door and you're like, nah, I don't need that. And you just like turn around and left. Like, oh, man.
No. If I saw a save station or I went through a room where the little S pops up on the map because I'd been there already, I went in and saved. I just would like
Not
not
for 30% of your collection.
Yeah, I was
though.
like, clearly fucking. I'm sorry, that shit's
yeah,
so
I just
funny.
like didn't see a save station, and maybe I hadn't discovered some, but like I never passed an S on the map and didn't stop. Remember, I was also bitching about not having enough like power bombs, and I'm like, well, I never fucking stopped at a save station, so that might explain one of the reasons why.
Save stations don't reload your missiles and power bombs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's only missile recharge stations, which is annoying.
And those don't save. It's so
Yeah, they
fucking
don't
dumb.
save.
It's so
Yeah.
No energy. I never had a problem with. I had like 9 energy tanks or whatever, and I never was low, like ever.
Oh man, God, that is so funny.
It was heart wrenching, dude. It felt horrible. So I went and I watched the last 2 boss battles against Meta Ridley and the big spooky Metroid. That did not look like what I expected.
The
it
big
to look like.
spooky Metroid. That's great.
He's a scary boy.
That's the Metroid Prime.
He's the number one. And I did that for you guys. I suffered for you.
You missed out on an annoying long boss fight and another less annoying but still really long boss fight.
So I didn't miss much.
The Metroid Prime fight is not long.
I'm just talking about like the 3 phases where you're chasing it through identical sections in a cave repeatedly.
They don't even make you walk through the holes. It just like lets you flip down through the hole further into the planet core, and then you keep shooting.
It's just there's 3 of them, and there doesn't need to be 3 of them. That's all.
That's fair.
Early 2000s game design, you know?
Yep.
There are a lot of games
totally.
that still use save points, homie G, and I just want to point that out. I know we're in the era of autosave, but take it on its. You gotta roll with the punches. You can't just go, I don't need that. You're gonna need it.
Well, mind you, I had played 75% of this game without having died. It wasn't a thought like, oh, I better save in case I get fucking blasted. I would mostly save when I wanted to close the game and play another game.
Yeah, you had your learning experience the one time. That's usually what people learn on, is by dying once. But I mean, I didn't die this time I played through, but it's also the second time I fully played the game. So I don't know. Like I said, checkpoints would have been a nice addition for this game, but not for like each room. It would be for like before boss fights, sort of like how Dread did it.
Yeah, so you still would have been fucked, Eej, but if you died on a boss fight, which would have been more awesome, then you wouldn't have died. Did you fight the Omega Pirate then?
Where you're shooting the big blocks of blue off of him.
Yeah, and then, okay, so you got the Phazon suit.
Yeah.
How are you losing all that health in those Phazon rooms then?
I don't know. I'm assuming that's how I was down to a single tank of energy, was in that room. What are those things that are shooting you in that room when you're like jumping in between the mushrooms?
Probably Metroids. When you're at that point, I would think it would be like Hunter Metroids grabbing you.
Yeah, it's only Metroids at that point in the Phazon mines.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and listen to exactly where I was when we were at the podcast, but I didn't play for like over a week. And when I booted back up, I'm in that mushroom
Maybe
room.
because you had just fought the Omega Pirate and lost a bunch of health and then didn't save right after that. Because even though there's a save room connected to that room.
Stop it.
Because you're going to lose a lot of health.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what happened. And I just booted up and I was like, I have no life. And I went back into that room with the big diagonal spider ball tracks. And I wasn't even paying attention and I just got dead. I don't even know what killed me. Like I wasn't even looking at that. I don't know what killed me, and I died.
Hate to see it.
A single shot. So,
well, you got pretty far in the game. So
I suffered.
For that, I applaud you.
I suffered.
I commend you. I commend you for it.
But I will also heartily laugh and point at your suffering because of the thing that you did to yourself.
Stop.
Yeah, shit's hilarious. Shit's so funny. It'll never not be funny.
I mean, sucks to suck, bro.
Okay. So what are we gonna do? You just want to go through and pick one game from each console to chat about today?
Yep.
I know you guys aren't big on the rules, but does there need to be rules to make it feel like you're doing something worthwhile? Or can we just chat about some stuff?
Just an order of who offers which game in what order. I propose reverse alpha, Nick, EJ, Chris.
Nick is furiously looking through spreadsheets right now.
So, what, you want to go in release order for these consoles? Let's talk about the NES.
Yeah.
Okay. I can do that.
Hell yeah.
The game I would bring to the table for the NES that is not in our top 100 list, so I can follow this rule for you, EJ, just as long as I can have the time to search through the document every time, is a little game called Super Mario Bros. 2.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
buddy.
It might have been mentioned in the talking of Mario World and Mario 3, which did make it as far as the old school 2D platformers. But Mario Bros. 2 is so weird. Obviously, everyone knows that it didn't start out as a Mario game and then it got sort of retrofit into one. But it has so much Mario DNA and it established so many things going forward that became integral to the franchise. But it was also still, there's so many unique things about it that, I mean, just the whole mechanic of standing on enemies, like you do not jump on enemies to kill them in Mario Bros. 2. It's so foreign and strange. You're picking up turnips and throwing it at things. You're discovering these potions and throwing them on the ground and unlocking hidden doors to go into like the back side of the level and like picking up coins. And it's so weird. And it kind of started the trend. Well, no, Mario Bros. 1 did that of like secrets, but Mario Bros. 2, I think, sort of expanded upon that in a very natural progression. And if nobody ever knew that it started out as a different game, I don't think anyone would question its validity as a Mario game. It's sort of placed in the canon. And yeah, it's just a hell of a good game. It's awesome that you can play as 4 different characters that all have different physics to them. Like Toad runs the fastest. He can pick up things faster, but he doesn't jump as high. And like Peach has the float and Luigi has what Luigi is in the future. He's slippery and he's got the really floaty jump and he jumps higher than Mario even does. And being able to play as 4 different characters, that's sort of what spurred along the new Super Mario Bros. Series. And those are wildly popular, probably the most popular Mario sort of section of games out of all of them, like as far as the platformers go. And yeah, Mario Bros. 2 is just a hell of a game. We need to see more Wart. I mean, Birdo can drive a cart and play tennis sometimes, but all the other big bosses don't really get a lot of representation in later games. It's mostly just sort of like the mobs, the small guys, the shy guys, and well, pretty much the shy guys and the Sniffets and the Ninja are the extent of the characters that kind of are recurring forward after that. You don't get Mauser, you don't get that weird dragon, but I wish there would be more because I like Mario Bros. 2 a lot. The Subcon. It's all in a dream, brother. It's all Twin Peaks invading Mario Land.
What? Twin Peaks? David Lynch? Huh? What?
Yeah, I mean, that's like the era, like Link's Awakening and Mario Bros. 2. Like those are very, the strange sequel, the very influenced by media at the time.
I've never played Mario Bros. 2.
You ought to. It's a lot of fun.
I didn't realize that the physics of the individual characters was something that was established all the way back then and is carried through, like you said, to the new Super Mario Bros. Games, like 3D World's got the same shtick with all those characters. Smash Bros. Characters have been completely built on some of those ideas. Like, that's fucking cool. I didn't realize it was that old.
Yeah, so like 88, 87, probably when it was originally came out. So like, yeah, long ass time.
In Japan, there was a proper Super Mario Bros. 2, and this was a different game, correct?
Yes, in Japan, there was Super Mario Bros. 2, which we ended up getting later on the SNES as Mario Bros. Lost Levels in the All-Stars pack. But they had Super Mario Bros. 2, and then they had Super Mario Bros. USA, which was a sort of updated and sprite swapped. And I'm not sure what else, if they actually changed music, if Koji Kondo did the OG music on Doki Doki Panic as well, or what all that sort of relates to. That's a sort of strange kind of rabbit hole to go down in the first place, because that's based on a license. It's like this, not a TV show, but it's like a media property in Japan. So yeah, very interesting and foreign to me. But yeah, the music is awesome. Mario Bros. 2 is a banger.
Oh, the soundtrack is a quantum leap from Mario 1's, 25-second themes looped infinitely, which are great. They're good little themes.
Iconic.
Yeah, Mario 2 is it's head and shoulders above. Just an absolute like bop of like an overworld theme, and the really like bongo drum heavy like cave theme and Birdo's boss battle. Like, they're great. It's great.
See, you say bongo, so you're thinking of the All-Stars version, which was then also reused in the Mario Advance release, which was interesting that they chose that Mario Bros. 2 would be the launch title for the Game Boy Advance. Like, I don't know what made that choice. Like, why did they make that choice? The release order for that whole series was very strange as far as the Mario Advance games. But yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about just like the NES version of the score, I think that was a little bit of the start of that directional change from Mario Bros. 1 into what the future of Mario music would be. And it wasn't really fully cemented until Mario World. They started getting like the island, sort of Spanish island mixture with like the steel drums and like that kind of percussive backbone for a lot of syncopation. I mean, you got a little bit of that with Mario Bros. 1, but I think the choosing of instruments sort of defined what Mario music sounds like. What makes Mario sound like Mario? And I think some of that was also like, there's almost like a Calliope kind of vibe with the opening to Mario Bros. 2. And it's like in Mario Bros. 3, obviously it's a stage play. Mario Bros. 2, I think, sort of evokes some of that feeling as well. It sort of feels like a I can't think of the freaking word, but it's like a traveling show. I can't think of what the literal word I'm trying to think of, but it's got a definite sort of Mario-ness to it that has carried throughout the years.
This is why I wanted to do something like this just as prompts, because I just learned a bunch of shit that I didn't know. And Nick, you're like just pulling out facts and things that just out of your booty hole. And I'm like, this is why I listen to the podcast again after editing it. I just let you two lull me to sleep with your vast video game knowledge. Is that the only other NES game that you would say you probably like?
I've got other ones, but just not ones that I've played deeply enough to speak like with authority. Not that I would say that I'm like an authority on Super Mario Bros. 2, but I feel like I've played enough of it to say that I have a grasp on it. Other games I would sort of throw out there would be like River City Ransom or the original Final Fantasy, or even just like the NES Tetris. But those I can't really say much more than like, yeah, I played an hour or two of that and it was cool,
Well, I have a long list of games actually, but I think if we're doing one apiece, I'm going to bring the OG, the first game I ever played, Joust. The arcade port on the NES. Okay? In which you are a man riding an ostrich, bouncing on enemies so you can collect their eggs before the lava kills you. It makes no sense. I don't understand what's happening.
We love the 80s.
Hell of an arcade cabinet.
And talk about a game that was like playing with physics in an interesting way. Trying to figure out, especially at a very, very young age, but trying to figure out how this Birdman reacts, because it's like Flappy Bird, right? You're just spamming your A button to bounce them, right? And so you're essentially flying and you're trying to figure out the weight of this birdman, because you have to bounce on top of enemies to kill them, right? So you're keeping yourself up, and then you're trying to time how you fall on enemies' heads, and like the velocity of this fucking birdman just plummeting towards the lava and trying to like fly him back up after you killed an enemy without like hitting the lava, and the lava is getting higher and higher as the level progresses. Very difficult for 4-year-old EJ, all right? Very difficult. It's one of those games where you think about it fondly and then you go back and play it and you're like, video games were so fucking bad, dude. Once upon a time.
I mean, it was just a bunch of people in California doing a lot of drugs and basically doing whatever they wanted, and people would play it. They were like, the novelty of this is astounding. Like, I have to own this game starring a birdman called Joust that has nothing to do with jousting. Of course, like this has to be in my home collection.
Right. And early game design obviously was very centered around the arcade cabinet and the idea of patrons walking into a place and putting money into a machine. And so Joust, what's the point of Joust? Do you beat Joust? You just keep going. The stage gets harder and harder as the lava rises up and you get more and more enemies you're trying to avoid while also killing and collecting their eggs so you can get a high score. But like, that's the loop. You're just going for a high score. You're just trying to collect a bunch of fucking eggs.
Yeah, you can't beat Joust. You can just feel better about how you played Joust by degrees.
Well, Joust is also a multiplayer game, so can you beat chess?
Whoa.
That's really deep, man.
Nick walked away for that whole conversation and then just came in and just wrecked me with this philosophical bullshit.
I had to pee. I was going to stop your memory.
The only way to beat chess is to not play the game at all.
All right, thanks, War Games.
Oh my.
No, Joust is really cool, and it is, if you look at the cabinet, the artwork on the side is a knight riding this giant bird. He is the titular birdman holding a jousting pole. So he is jousting. You do have enemies that you're jousting against, but it just turns out that instead of a horse, you're on this bird.
What's the Joust lore? Why are we doing this?
Like Chris said, except not California, it's Midway, so it's actually the Midwest, like Chicago area, I think. They're doing a bunch of drugs and making stuff up and selling it to bars and arcades.
Hell yeah. It's one of those games that, like I said, at an early age, trying to figure out how exactly you control this thing. When you're on a platform, when you're running and you try to stop and like you can't stop on a dime, there's so much weight behind this creature. And so, yeah, just trying to understand how this thing moves through the world.
Yeah, it's a cool sort of like physics and interaction with a thing in a video medium was so new back then that just the idea of something moving after you stop controlling it was just as interesting as pushing a joystick and a thing on the screen moving. So just the concept of like really old arcade games, like not just like Space Invaders, you stop moving the stick and things stop happening. But in Asteroids, like you continue your momentum as you are floating through space, and it has a more distinct feeling. And something like Joust, it's still like a 2D jumping and like having like the floatiness of it. And like you said, like timing your descent so that you land upon the enemy as opposed to them stabbing you with their joust stick.
Which is still not how jousting works, for the record. You do not jump on top of your joust opponents.
Have you ever jousted, Chris?
The other, I've seen a Knight's Tale. It doesn't involve birdmen.
You've been weighed, you've been measured.
You've been found wanting, motherfucker.
Oh!
So you said asteroids, Nick, and bringing up like how the momentum of the ship works in that game and using those physics to your advantage. Like, dude, you remember we had an asteroids arcade cabinet in the shop in like middle school and high school? Dude, we put so many hours into that thing trying to beat each other's high scores. Oh my gosh. Core memory unlocked.
I'll always remember just basically a total non sequitur. I don't give a shit. It's our podcast. Summer 2014, I came up from the Central Coast and I worked my summer job at Linfield again for a fifth year because I didn't want to find work in Central California. And I brought up like a duffel bag full of retro consoles and was like, I'm just going to play old games all summer. So me and my roommates that I was illegally living with because the college didn't want to house me, got into Star Fox 64 high score offs all the time. And I felt like I had the just an unbeatable score in that game. And I let it sit and I went and booted up and was like, okay, I really want to do like a full run through like the far left side of the map, like all the hardest levels, see what high score I can get. I woke up, I am second on the high score list behind Tim Singer, my roommate. And I literally threw the controller aside. My other roommate was there for this and just stalked back to his room, just screaming, Singer! Singer! At the top of my lungs. And Tim comes boiling out of his room. It's like, you found it, did you? And oh my God, like it was. Because he didn't tell me. Wow. We've been telling each other all summer, like, beat your score, fucker. Oh, man. Oh, topped your score. And we were watching a lot of them. And he just let it sit. He just let me fucking find it on my own.
That's so good. Chris, what's your NES game?
Really quick before we get off of Joust, I just want to throw it out there that Balloon Fight is basically just a ripoff of Joust.
Yes.
And there is a Game Boy version that is different slightly, has like a story mode that I really want to play and I just haven't gotten around to, called Balloon Kid. Just wanted to throw that out there while we're on Joust.
Oh. On the record now, Balloon Kid.
Nice little piece of lore. I love that. I'm gonna go with something that did not make the cut from our top 100. It's gonna be a lot of these for me. It's games that I suggested that did not make the cut for top 100. Duck Hunt. I love this game. I would play Duck Hunt today if I had my NES. It wasn't in storage in Nana's attic. I would be like, let's just like throw Duck Hunt in the NES and let's play some fucking Duck Hunt. Just a very satisfying little loop that does just enough stuff to make it feel really engaging and charming. Like all the little like music cues are just fantastic. Like, you know, you boot up the game and you immediately get the you're like, oh, I'm in for such a good time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're gonna hunt some ducks. And just everything is just so charming. It's like one of those charming games, I think, on that console. Like, frankly, like the ducks are adorable. You almost feel bad shooting them. Like, oh, they got big old eyes and they're all colorful. And the dog is so happy for you when you shoot a duck, but he's so willing to laugh in your face when you fuck up and you go, boo. It's like, you little bastard. Like, I feed you. I house you. I could shoot you if you really want to keep mouthing off. Like, that's well within my rights. It's not. In this video game world, maybe it is. And just a classic difficulty curve of those ducks just get fucking faster and faster. You've only got the 3 bullets. The little like end of stage jingle, like the smooth jazz. Just the whole thing is just such a great time. And I love like the clay pigeon, like also like sub game where you could go like skeet shooting basically. But I love the thing that had always like fascinated me as a kid is like, how did they do this? Because it obviously doesn't have like a receiver for any like infrared light that's actually coming out of the light gun. And it wasn't until I was much older that I actually like looked it up and I was like, oh wow, that's really interesting that it couldn't detect the infrared light coming out of the gun with all of the pixels colored exactly as they were on the screen in the art of the game. So when you click the light gun, it sends a signal to the NES to change all of the pixels on the screen to black so that it can pick up the one spot that the infrared light is hitting. And that's how it knows if you've hit or not. And so if you watch it when you're not playing, you'll see like, we just take it as like a muzzle flash because it goes white right afterwards, right? And it's fast enough that it reads exactly as intended narratively of like, oh, I fired and it was like a big flash of light because the gun just went off. But I was like, that's genius. Like that's ingenious to me. They're like, if we can't have both art and have the infrared received, what if we just like flip the screen really quickly to all black so it registers it and it'll be so instantaneous they won't notice. Like we notice obviously, but they made it work narratively. It's just such a fun game. I love like playing Duck Hunt with Jaja Joey, like throwing that in and like who's gonna get the most ducks, who's gonna have the high score, and it's just a fun, simple, engaging little game. That probably only got its due after it started getting packed in with Mario Brothers. But it deserves the praise that it gets, I think. And I was sad to see it cut from the top 100, but I wasn't willing to give up any of my other stuff for it. So it is what it is.
Fair. Question for you guys. We're already 45 minutes in, and we do have other things to talk about today. do we want to make this a 2-hour rambling about random games, or do we want to make this a segment that we do on every episode for the next 10 weeks? And we just do a new console all the way through the handhelds and just sort of highlight some interesting games to talk about.
I like that. That means I don't have to scramble doing homework.
Yeah, I think that'd be kind of nice. Maybe we do 2 consoles a week.
That's a great one console, 2 console. If we do 1 a week, that'll get us pretty much through the whole summer, which I wouldn't mind having that nice little chunk of content to come to as like a series.
Yeah, just a fun opener or closer. I could put this at the end of this podcast even. But we're figuring it out live. Fuck it, you know?
I like that. And I think I could still do my surprise segment anyway, in light of earlier parts of this conversation.
Is that tied to this particular?
It's tied to favorite games from Nintendo consoles, yeah.
Okay. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I think that would be a fun little bit. We just do it every week. We talk about a couple of random games that haven't been talked about. And yeah, between consoles and handhelds, that'll carry us definitely through summer.
Through this next 10 weeks, is this the console crusade?
Wait a minute.
It's finally happening. Oh my God.
It's all coming together.
We prepared for this, my brothers.
No, the real console crusade were the friends we made along the way.
Stop it. Well, let's just pivot. Let's do that. Let's just have a nice little bit we can do to talk about some stuff. Before we recorded a couple days ago, I was like, what are we going to talk about this week? There's not a lot of news. We haven't really been playing anything new. It's sort of the lull before Zelda, which we're all going to be gearing up for and playing probably exclusively, right? Maybe we'll pick something like retro we can just like play around with a bit. And I was like, maybe I'll play through Megaman X. I did start that, by the way.
Oh, how many levels?
Just the first 2 levels. The intro level and then the...
Chill Penguin.
Yeah.
The first 2 levels, canonically.
Yeah.
From there, you can kind of split off and do what you want.
Well, I wanted to do a golden path. I looked up what's the ideal order for all the power-ups.
Well, there's power-ups, or there's defeat the boss easy path. Storm Eagle's pretty easy with just lemons, but you know.
There is the current speedrunning meta has you doing saving a repeat run through Boomer Kawanger stage, which is very long to run back through. But that does mean you have to fight him like 4th. And that shit is so hard just to beat him with the X-Buster, because none of your other weapons. He's really tough. It's doable. I've only beaten him without dying on that fight once, but it saves you a ton of time.
Is X4 the first time you got to play as Zero?
No.
No, is there a section 3 that you play as Zero?
You can you can repair Zero in X3, which lets you like call him in and use him in limited bursts.
But X4 is the first one that you can play as him throughout the entire game. Like he has a campaign in 4.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. But you can play as him in X3.
I didn't realize that. I started playing and I was like, man, I don't love the way this feels. And then I remembered, I love X4 because I get to play as fucking Zero, just slashing and dashing, and that's my jam. And playing X4 as X, I don't really love. I'm always playing Zero. And there are definitely some bosses that are a lot easier with X than with having to get up close and personal with Zero. But I was playing it and I was like, that must be an X4 thing, and that's why my love for X4 was, cemented so early.
Yeah, some of those bosses in like X5, X6. Which one is High Max in? Do you remember, Nick? Is he in 5 or 6?
I stopped after 4.
That fight is so fucking hard with Zero, just because he's got so many like quick attacks that do a big area of effect around his own body. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. I'm glad you're playing it. Like, keep us posted, because that game's fucking great.
Yeah, it's just like something easy you can come back to and dip your toes into, and when you have an hour to kill.
Just load up a save state.
But Zelda, right around the corner. I haven't figured out yet, guys, if I want to order this digitally so that I can play it like first thing on Thursday, or try to just go to Best Buy and get a copy Friday morning, which means I wouldn't be able to play it until Saturday or late Friday night because I have an engagement on Friday. So I don't know.
You want this on your shelf, probably.
Eventually, yeah.
Don't buy it twice. That's dumb. Yeah, I know you, and
I
you
do
know
be
you,
doing that.
and this.
You don't like this game or this franchise enough to justify buying it twice.
Yeah, so just get a physical. It's probably going to be a contender to go on the top 100 list in future revisions. So you might as well have it just in case. And if you can't really play it Friday anyway, then having it Thursday from like midnight to 1:30 a.m. isn't going to be that big a difference, man. I'm going first thing Friday, Best Buy. I've got a $5 off coupon. So I'll be putting
Frugal Chris shelling out 65 hard ones.
yeah, buddy. Not soft, not firm, hard. I'll put like 4 hours in from like 8 a.m. to about 11. And then I've got to go get in a car to drive to Nashville to get a plane, go to the music festival. But Josh and Joey have requested Mario Kart, Smash Bros, and maybe they'll want a little bit of Zelda action over the weekend. In any case, I will have it. Do some playing time, just like with Breath of the Wild, like right on release. That's wild to me that I get to do that like twice. The symmetry. It's interesting.
Let's break this on the air, fellas. Nick, how do you see this playing out over the next week? Are we going to come and do an early impressions next Monday? Or is this something that we let stew for a while?
Checking my order on Target.com, there is a likelihood that I will not have the game in time to get first impressions by next week.
Oh, you got to quit ordering online, bro.
Yeah, but I paid $50 for the game, so I can wait.
Save 20
2 to 3
hard
days.
ones.
I will save 20 hard ones for 3-4 days.
That's
fine.
Man,
I don't care.
The FOMO's too strong.
$5 a
EJ,
day.
I know you're with me on this, EJ. The FOMO's too strong. I could not. This is exactly why I don't do it anymore.
This is why I buy games twice, because I want them at 9 o'clock on Thursday, and then like a month later, I'm like, yeah, I gotta have a physical though. It's fucking dumb. It's incredibly stupid.
It's
I'm a mark.
so
I'm an idiot.
stupid. EJ, stop it.
Yeah, you're the reason why Nintendo keeps winning, EJ. It's not me, it's you.
Oh.
Nintendo do be winning. Although, according to their fiscal reports, which was released today, Switch sales down 22%.
It's still their third best year, so it's not even like a lot.
What are we at in terms of Switch family console sales lifetime now?
125 million? I mean, not a huge number over the last time they reported, but yeah, it's solidly third best-selling home console.
Wow.
After PS1, PS2. Or no, it outsold the PS1. So yeah, it's just behind PS2 for home console and then behind the DS. Because that's at like 155. PS2 is like 158. Like just astronomical, ridiculous cartoon numbers. Don't know if it'll ever reach that unless the next Switch is in the Switch family of consoles. You know, the next console from Nintendo is like a Game Boy Color situation.
Yeah, I was going to say Switch Pro. Oh no. New Nintendo Switch.
Why not do a proper refresh? Why not? And just call it the Switch so you just sell another fucking 75 million units over the next 6 years. Why not? Because Nintendo, you know? I saw today, Chris, I'll start with your thoughts on this, but I saw today somebody saying that they would like a Switch 2 and that 2 would not only represent it being a, you know, iteration on the Switch hardware, but a return to dual screen gaming. What do you think about that? How would they even do it?
No.
I don't even know how they would do it.
What's the fucking point? Like that only works if it's going to be a handheld only console. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know. Couldn't you just design? No, you couldn't really do that. No, I don't get it. That's stupid. That's dumb. Doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the appeal of that would be unless it was going to be like a handheld only situation. But even then, like you'd have to design games just for that. Like, no, it doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's a bad idea. I don't think Nintendo should do that. I think the main thing that made the DS novel and successful was the resistive touchscreen on the bottom. But now resistive touchscreens are like a dead technology. I don't think they're even really made anymore. It's all capacitive. And at that point, you can't do the sort of fine, precise actions that you could on a DS and a 3DS. So there is no point. The Switch already has a capacitive touchscreen. Look how often that's fucking used. Never. It's for like mobile ports and that's all. So yeah, there's no point in that. The Wii U had some like potential, but even that hardly ever used the screen. It was like Mario Maker and 3 of the fun mini games in Nintendo Land, and that's pretty much it. So no, we do not need a second screen. We don't need touch really anymore. the thing that people want, the thing that they've made abundantly clear as being the successful things that sell are buttons on a controller. Like that's what people want. Don't stray away from that.
I wonder, could they try and do a Wii U situation? The console would be like $500. It would be a direct competitor with PlayStation. Like, could they just do like, all right, we're gonna sell Switch as a handheld. It's gonna essentially be a refresh, but the same technology. But it'll come with like a home unit, like we had speculated with the NX, and that it'll actually be a proper home console with a handheld controller that is just the Switch.
That's the Wii U. You're talking about the Wii U. They tried that. Look how well it did.
Well, if they had called that something other than the Wii U, it might have done better.
Well, even if they didn't, what you're describing is basically like a PS5 bundled with the like Q Lite or whatever they're calling this handheld that's just going to be like a streaming device / second screen controller. So that's not like far outside the realm of possibility. There's like a Switch that basically doesn't run any of its own games, but just like streams them from the game. I recognize
that's just the Wii U.
It's not
right,
though,
that is literally
because
the Wii
you
U.
can't. It's not though because you can't take the Wii U gamepad further than 7 feet from the console or whatever. Like I couldn't even take that into the bathroom to shit, and I tried, and I really wanted it to work that way, and it didn't, and I was very disappointed that it didn't. But if you could like stream the game to the handle and like take the handheld on the go, fucking cool, way cool. It can't play its own games, but
no, the reason why it had such a short leash between the console and the handheld version of, or part of the Wii U, the tablet, is because they had a like proprietary sort of codec and like wireless system that talked between the console and the gamepad so that it had no delay. There was no input delay on the gamepad, which was amazing if you think about it. Like, and you didn't have the video blocking from compression. It was just such a strong link. And I don't know if that technology was ever used anywhere else, but like that's the reason why I had to be so close to it. And as soon as you introduce a different technology, if you try to do this over like Wi-Fi or something, or heaven forbid, a cell phone signal, you are going to be playing a YouTube video at 480p on your quote unquote Switch 2. And it's just going to be an asinine experience with hella input delay. It would be so far from what you would want from a gaming experience that it boggles the mind to even consider it.
The Switch hardware was outdated when it was put in the Switch 6 years ago. So
it was outdated, but that was just to reach a price point. Like,
right.
I don't see Nintendo wanting to make a device that costs more than $400. I think that's like a high ceiling.
I don't know what that conversation is internally. Like, you can only speculate, obviously, but like PlayStation is selling gangbusters, and that's a $500 unit.
They could have charged more for it too.
Probably. They probably could have done the PS3 price and gotten away with it. My thing is like, you could implement some of the Wii U ideas, which there were good ones.
There were 2 good ones.
And the Switch was sort of iterating on that idea properly, right? Instead of a home console that you can play handheld sometimes, a handheld console that you can play when you're at home, right? Just making the home experience worthwhile. Like, that's all I care about in the Switch 2 is making the home console experience even decent, because it's not decent right now. If you have a 4K TV, we've talked about it, it's miserable. It looks fucking terrible unless you're sitting 10 feet away from your TV. And I've tried everything I can, and you can only polish a turd so much, but it's still a stinky pile of poopy. I was on the Nintendo sub the other day. Someone had asked about buying exclusive games to the Switch, and I had basically said like, yeah, I only buy games exclusive to the Switch. Like, if it's a multi-platform title, why would I want to buy and play a worse version of it? And every multi-platform title is definitively worse on the Switch, right? There's not really a question about it. And I was like, imagine in 10 years, and I have an 8K television, and I'm trying to play a fucking 540p version of Pick Your Poison when I could be playing a 4K version on the PlayStation, right?
That's why you got to get yourself a retro 1080p plasma TV, it's from the era, so it recreates the visuals the way the developers intended.
I hate the fact that is going to be like the CRT for the next generation. They're like, oh, we got to get like a plasma screen television. Like, I remember my first flat screen was a plasma, and it had to be transported vertically because if you laid it down, like all the plasma would settle and fuck up the picture forever. And like, I moved that thing all over the place. It was terrible.
That's our future, dog. That's our future.
Dude, I am not kidding you when I say that Breath of the Wild.
This dummy keeps saying Breath of the Wild, but he obviously means Tears of the Kingdom. What an idiot.
Almost single-handedly caused me to go out and buy a new 1080p television for my office. I was this close. I was doing the research. I had it in my Amazon cart, bro. And I was like, I don't want to play
Tears of the Kingdom
on my 4K TV. It looks bad. It looks shitty. And I remember playing Breath of the Wild on my old 1080p TV, and I think it looked gorgeous. Probably going to look a lot better on that OLED little handheld screen. But
I would also assume that your current LG setup has better upscalers than whatever TV you had back then. That was your 4K TV of choice.
so my office TV, I think it's probably because I'm sitting so close to it, fucking just looks really rough with the Switch. And I've tried everything. But I did get my front room TV dialed in recently, and I was actually kind of impressed. I was like, this does not look so bad. I'm also sitting twice as far back, and so that probably has a big impact on what I'm seeing and how I'm seeing it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with Breath of the Wild this week, because I don't want to be sitting there looking at all 14 pixels. You know, like, come on. Stretched and blurred, and ugh. We'll see. Was there anything else interesting in the fiscal report from Nintendo this week or today, Nick?
I know Chris wanted to celebrate something, but I don't know how much of a celebration you wanted to muster up for it.
Did I? Oh, just that. Yeah, the Prime HD remaster cleared 1 million units. It was like 1.3, 1.4.
Yeah, 1.09, I believe.
Something like that. Whatever. It cleared 1 million units. It outsold Bayonetta 3, which, you know, big fucking victory that is. Meanwhile, like, Jesus, what did Mario Kart do this quarter? Like another 3 million units? Something ridiculous. Like, that's just preposterous how well that game continues to sell. It's like the safest bet in gaming that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is going to sell. And when they release Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Plus Ultra on the Switch 2, it's going to sell another 45 million units, because everybody's like, this is it. This is the definitive Mario Kart. Like, you think about it, what are they going to do in like a theoretical Smash 6? Like, where do they go from here? Like, I don't think they go anywhere. I just think they keep like porting this game, and God help them, maybe they make some like balance patches. I doubt it. But it's the same with Mario Kart. They're just going to keep releasing this definitive version and keep redoing old tracks and then release some new tracks, and that's it. It's like a game as service kind of thing now. I'm fine with it as long as it's still good, and it definitely is good, as we learned at the beach.
I don't know if they can get Sakurai back for Smash Bros. Again. Maybe if they ported Smash Ultimate to the next iteration. Although, again, they're going to just ride the Switch brand into the ground, because they'd be incredibly stupid not to. So, like, we're talking 10 years from now on the next true Nintendo console, like, maybe. But Sakurai will be like a 60 fucking year old man. Like, does that torch get handed off to somebody else? Does Smash Bros. Continue to live on, or do they just port, like you said, and just... I mean, who knows? It's an interesting thing to think about, but...
I mean, Ultimate was first shown, people kind of assumed that it was like, oh, this is kind of a gussied up port of Smash 4, but it feels wildly different from that game. If you ever tried picking that back up on the Wii U, it feels so slow, and because they had to make it for the 3DS as well, and that shared the same physics, so hits were very delayed. You were in the air for so long before you actually hit the edge of the screen. It was crazy, just playing that in comparison to Ultimate, but yeah, I mean... Think of the sort of trajectory of Smash Bros. And going from Melee to Brawl to Smash 4 to Ultimate. They're not like huge, wild jumps adding a bunch of different mechanics. I mean, the biggest jump obviously was 64 to Melee, but since then it's been kind of like just plugging along. The next iteration can just keep doing that. I don't think it needs to have all of the characters. They can cut back on the roster, but just kind of iterate a little bit, add some new modes, make the new shtick. Like, what's the next Smash run? What's the next home run contest? What's the gimmick, as it were? And then hopefully implement some good netcode, because I miss playing Smash Bros against people, and I don't have people at my house to play with. Like Smash 4, I played a shit ton because I lived with like 3 other guys, and I would frequently go over to someone else's house who we would all just hang out and play Smash Bros together. So like, that was a community sort of playing event, but I don't have that anymore. So if I wanted to play, it has to be online. So they need to fix their netcode. So hopefully, but I'm not gonna like hold my breath on that either.
It's a goddamn travesty. Smash Bros. Has had such poor online support, and most of their games, like Mario Kart, runs fine, and
Yeah, totally serviceable.
I don't understand the back end. Like, why does a Mario Kart run so well and a Smash Bros. Is an unplayable heap of trash? I have no clue.
Racing games are a lot more deterministic than fighting games. Like most of the time, you're gonna keep your momentum until you hit something, so you can track where people are going to be at any moment. But fighting games are much more technical.
Fighting games, you have to be damn near close to frame perfect so that people can react to each other. Whereas in a racing game,
Yeah, I would suggest if like you're actually interested, watch some like YouTube videos because people have done really good breakdowns on how like different netcode technologies work, and it is very fascinating. It's crazy that these like games work at all. I will always reiterate that it's a miracle anything ever works. But yeah, it is really a bummer that one of the biggest video games in the world, like what Smash Bros, has crossed over 30 million units. Like it's the third best-selling game on the console, and the online just sucks. Same with Animal Crossing, the second best-selling game on the console. Like we shouldn't just roll over and take it, but what are we gonna do? Because normies will just buy it regardless. So we can throw a hissy fit about it and hope they listen, hope they fix it in the next one, but they're not gonna fix it in this one. That just sucks. But I mean, it's not just Nintendo either. I think of like one of the worst examples of netcode is the NBA 2K games. Like, tell me that works well, right?
I've never played those games online. Probably for that reason. I don't know. It's been so long. But is there any other news we want to chat about before we let Chris explain to us his surprise segment?
Well, I just wanted to say really quickly that I did go through and play and beat Skyward Sword. And I know Chris just did that a month ago. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that again now that I have more context.
Godspeed to you. I mean, I don't want to talk anymore about how shitty and terrible that lazy port is.
Nick, did you like it? Was it worthy of your time?
Yeah, I liked it. It wasn't that bad.
A ringing endorsement from Nick Durheim. It wasn't that bad.
How do you contextualize that? Like just in the pantheon of the 3D Zelda games? Like I don't think this. So if I were to order them just off the top of my head, it would probably be Breath of the Wild, then Ocarina of Time, then Twilight Princess, then Wind Waker, then this, then Majora's Mask, because I haven't really played too much Majora's Mask. And that's all of them, right? Am I missing any?
Nope. That's it.
It's low tier among Zelda games.
Of all the ones you played, it's the literal bottom.
I mean, I've been playing Majora's Mask, and that will probably go up higher. And I could see this being better than Wind Waker. I like the dungeons more than Wind Waker, and there's actually a good amount of them.
How many?
There were 7 dungeons in Skyward Sword.
There's 7 dungeons in Wind Waker. Why do we keep talking about how there's no dungeons?
Some of the dungeons in Skyward Sword were way more interesting than most of the other Zelda games, including Wind Waker.
I really liked how they would introduce an area and you would explore the area, you'd get to the dungeon. Like it was very, formulaic, but in a good way, because I think formulaic is often bandied about as a negative trait, but I think a lot of times it's what makes good storytelling. Like what's going to happen, and then when you get it, it's like you feel rewarded that it happened. So it's formulaic in that way that you go to a new area, you explore, you collect some things, you unlock the dungeon, you go in the dungeon, you do the puzzles, the mechanic of that dungeon is explained, you explore that, you fight the boss, you go to the next area. That is repeated over and over and over. You do that 3 times, 3 different areas. Then you unlock, the second tier of these areas. And you don't do them in the order that you did them initially. You go back to the desert area first, and you do the time traveling ship one. And that was like really cool. I love the time traveling ship.
Yeah, that was cool.
You go back to the forest and it's underwater. I mean, the way they sort of play with these areas. And I know you'd mentioned that there's only 1 Goron, but I think there's 3. And that isn't really sort of talked about, and those weird mole men are very strange and like kooky, and it's like, yeah, this is a really weird game, and I ended up enjoying it. I think it's a good one of those Zelda games, like that they made Ocarina of Time 5 times before they actually like made Breath of the Wild. And yeah, you can burn out on that formula, but it'd been such a long time since I'd gone through an entire one of these that it was nice to play it. And my major complaints were just the controls, and I wasn't playing it the way that they had originally made it, and is so obvious that this game would have been so much better if they actually did the huge amount of work. Like, I don't know how they would do some of the enemy encounters without having that sort of level of control. Like, I think of those Stalfos with the 4 arms that they like make the box and it has the one opening. You have to swing in that direction. So it is a conundrum in that way. But yeah, some of the boss fights were really cool. I loved the Galactos fight where you cut off the dude's arms and then you beat the shit out of him with his own arm with a giant sword.
Yeah, that boss fight is tight, but then you also get like the fucking Mike Wazowski ass Kraken that's just the stupidest looking boss I think in any Zelda game I've ever played. And they hype it up so much with like all the fucking tentacles coming in. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so tight. Oh my God, to get out there. Fucking Mike Wazowski with hair. I was like, literally laughed out loud. I was like, you have to be fucking kidding me.
Yeah. And it is a bummer that you fight that big pine cone like 3 times. Like, just reusing that boss fight to the slowly walking up the spiral. But
yeah, that's where I'm like, you know, I appreciate the familiarity of I understand how this game works, but I wouldn't say that's what I mean when I say formulaic. What I mean when I say formulaic is intellectually a little bit bankrupt, which this game ultimately was for me, as I put on this podcast. That I was like, it's like, oh, cool. The area is like slightly different and mostly just obnoxious for me to retread the same fucking place that I was before. And because the controls suck, doing all the underwater stuff was a pain in the ass.
I like the swimming in this game. I think it's the best swimming that Zelda's ever had.
That's not saying a lot, buddy. It's been really bad in most of these games.
It's not saying a lot. I think it's some of the best swimming in any 3D video game I've played. I struggle to think of something that does it better. Like, I found the piloting underwater and then boosting to have those like bursts of momentum. I found that to work really, really well, actually.
I like the boost. I did like the like corkscrew and like hopping up out of the water. Sometimes like aiming that was sort of obnoxiously imprecise.
Yeah, because I think it was mapped to what, like the L3 on the, I can't remember what it was mapped to, but I mean, obviously that was like a waggle that they just mapped onto something else, because this game is a waggle-ass game.
And they did heroic work to make it playable without motion plus technology at all.
And it did break my brain playing Future Redeemed after playing Skyward Sword, because I kept pressing the left trigger or the left bumper to like switch into camera control mode, because that's how you do it in Skyward Sword, like by default.
So many times in Resident Evil 2, I was just like holding that button to pivot around, and I was like, stop, you don't have to do that. Like, I'm gonna unintentionally, because that equips your sub weapon. And so I would be like turning the camera, and then I would go to like shoot a zombie in the leg, and I would like roll a frag grenade that I did not want to use because I was holding down that button, because Skyward Sword made me do it, because the fucking camera sucks.
Yeah.
As far as story beats, how do you see this impacting? Well, did you like it, first of all, and do you see it impacting Tears of the Kingdom the way Chris does?
I thought it was fine. It's not as impactful of a story as a lot of people talking about it online at the time and even now sort of make it out to be. Yes, there's like an implied sort of love story between Zelda and Link, but no, it's not really fleshed out beyond just sort of like, oh, she smiles at him. But I mean, there's touching moments. Like, I thought that when Zelda, does the I'm gonna take a nap now for a while, and she like tells Link like, you have to be the one waking me up this time. Like, I can't. I'm like throwing back to the original like opening scene where she wakes him up because Link is always a sleepyhead in all these games, and that's like a recurring thing in the games. And to sort of not subvert that role, but like to reverse the role, I thought that was like actually a really touching moment. I found that to be enjoyable. But like beyond that, just the whole like lore and like plot of the game, it's just like, it's whatever. It's just every Zelda game, like Goddess Hylia, sacrifice 3 things, the Triforce, whatever. But I don't think this game has any implications on Tears of the Kingdom.
Really? None? Okay, hang on. How can you possibly, how on earth, like with Fee, the warder against evil inside the sword, and it's like, I'll be fine, I'm inside the sword, knowing that it's the beginning of the timeline, and now the sword's fucking broken and Ganondorf's like awakening at the same time. Like, I don't know how that's, I mean, we're not gonna see Fee. I'm not saying that, but This definitely seems like a return to that whole idea that we're going to be okay as long as I'm inside the sword and we still have the sword, and now we don't have the sword. And like the use of the same like art assets just with different different skins on like the collector edition Switch, like specifically with that crest that none of the other games use, and the fact that like Ganondorf looks like Demise in all the moments of the trailer that we don't see his face directly, like with the big
Every
long,
Ganondorf looks like
flowing-
Demise. This is a big dude with red hair.
Not at all. Not at all. Look at the specific moments of him with the big giant like flowing.
And if Skyward Sword is the beginning of the timeline, then that's every Zelda game is affected by that then.
Correct. And this is the first time the Master Sword's been destroyed.
The Master Sword wasn't even all the Zelda games. I mean, Ganondorf wasn't either, but I'm just like thinking like, what about Skyward Sword has any implication on both Breath of the Wild besides like the goddess statues, because that's just a visual representation. There's
Sure.
a Tingle Island. That doesn't fucking mean that Tingle's canon or whatever that means.
No. The goddess's tears seems to call directly back to like Zelda's higher purpose in terms of like, you have to be the one to see this again.
Or it's just tears, because tears are like a recurring visual motif in all these Zelda games that have Sheikah in them since like Ocarina of Time. It's an eye with a tear. It's just like weird retconning. It's sort of like how the Hylian symbol, I never even know how you pronounce that, but it's the bird, and that's like, oh, that's the sky wings or whatever, the loft wings. It's like, yeah, no, there was a cool bird. Someone designs that thing 20 years ago, and you're just putting it in the game now. So it's like a weird future retcon, but no, I don't think that anything from Skyward Sword has really any bearing on the story, the lore or whatever of Tears of the Kingdom. It's just going to be following through on things that they would have put in Breath of the Wild, but they cut out because of time and scope.
Why did we get that game on Switch when they have Wii U versions of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker that are better games and are much more easily ported from that hardware to this hardware? Like, why did we get Skyward Sword then? Like, it just seems weird to me that I mean, I'm being a little bit like Charlie Day at the fucking, corkboard meme right here, but I don't know. Where there's smoke, that's all that it just seems like there's a lot of stuff that points towards they're going to return to this idea of like the sword that seals evil, the significance of that, what happens when it's gone. And maybe it's just going to be like a wink nudge. We're using similar visual vocabulary, but I want to believe there will be more than that.
Yeah, and I'm just so cynical to that idea. Like, I think there will be visuals, there will be callbacks, there will be things like they'll do like a little melody that'll call back to something, and it'll be like, oh, that's the goddess theme or whatever from Skyloft, and like, oh, that's cool. But that's like, that is what series and franchises are. It's not necessarily a through line. It's just like, oh, remember that thing? Don't you feel good because of that memory you have? And also, Skyward Sword sold almost 5 million copies on the Switch at $60. So that's probably why they ported it.
That's a good point. Is Girahim, is that one of the characters in Skyward Sword?
Yes.
So playing Hyrule Warriors, I really liked Girahim and I really liked Fi. And those are the only place I know those characters from. And when we get to the Wii U and we do our little segment moving forward, I will definitely be talking about Hyrule Warriors because I quite liked that game.
Dude, I love that game. That game fucks.
Age of Calamity is really good too. It's just a bummer that it is so non-performant. And hopefully, when we get a Switch 2, that gets a patch. Because I would finish that game if it did.
It did run pretty poorly. I played the demo,
dude.
and it was
It was chunky.
Yeah.
But it looks so good. The animations are so good. It is like awesome sort of. It is a lot more fan servicey, but in a way that feels like earned. Like if you really like the characters in Breath of the Wild, and you're like, oh, I wish we would have spent more time with those characters. You get those characters in spades in Age of Calamity. Like a really fun time. Actually get to play as all of the old champions, all of the new champions. You get to play as the weird fucking I can't remember the Sheikah guys like in the shrines that give you the little boosts, little spirit orbs. You get to play as one of those dudes. I think that's like the boss in like the DLC for Breath of the Wild. You play as one of the fairies, the great fairies too.
That's a prequel, right? It's canon as a prequel game?
No, it's not canon. It's like a what if almost. It's like time travel. It's timey-wimey stuff. Like it takes place in the past, but then you summon characters from the future to help you fight off the thing in the past. So it's like it's not real, but it's like it's still really cool and
yeah,
it's nice. You could play as Impa, which always rules, and Impa looks like Paya because yeah, it's nice.
This is an outro because I didn't want it to feel weird, just abruptly stopping. All right. But we continue this conversation and pivot to an idea that Chris had that we will edit and put together for next week. So you'll hear that in the future. So anyway, that's the Console Crusade.